Well, thank you so much, Mike, for taking the time this morning to connect and share a little bit more about what your
Absolutely.
has been with Colman coaching and just the impact that that's had. This call will be just around 30 minutes, and I would love to start with presencing what your role within FirstBank is, kind of just for anybody watching to kind of get to know what your own scope of leadership, role, experience, et cetera, is, so that it's helpful for them to know the impact coaching had then on that role, right?
Oh, okay, sure. So my title with the company or my position is I'm an executive vice president with FirstBank. But then kind of a subset of that, I'm the Bank Secrecy Act officer for FirstBank. And that is my responsibility is basically working with my team and people all throughout the organization on uh, kind of finding potentially uh, suspicious activity or financial crimes that might be flowing through the bank and both stopping that activity, exiting customer relationships that are problematic. And then we also have a responsibility to report that information to the U.S. Treasury. So specifically, there's a subset under that of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network or FinCEN. So our reporting goes to them. I've been in this role for the past 11 years of my career, but I've been with the bank a total of 25 years.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. And within the team that you run, approximately kind of what size team, who reports to you, and who are you managing? Yeah.
Sure. So including me, there are 31 people on the team. I have a few direct reports. I have a junior officer underneath me, and then I've got two managers. And then we also have what we call a strategy and support analyst who does more like data analytics type stuff and helps with project implementation. And then underneath those folks, we've got a team of analysts who are kind of like our highest end, most experienced folks who look at some of the more complex type of relationships or financial transactions that maybe need a review. Then we've got a couple of supervisors who then manage the rest of the team, and the rest of those folks do like there's associate analysts and specialists, and they do a lot of the like triaging of alerts that we get of just kind of out of the norm type of activity where then they look at those to decide if it's just kind of a one-off type situation or if there's something more that needs to be investigated further. We're also responsible for filing currency transaction reports. So anytime that a customer transacts over $10,000 in cash, those forms also have to be filled out and sent to FinCEN. And then we're responsible for kind of customer onboarding and customer oversight. So making sure that when we're onboarding new customers that they are legitimate and provide us all the right documentation. And then customers that we deem to be a little bit higher risk based on either like the products and services that they have, or if they're in a particular type of industry that's maybe more cash intensive, we have to do what are called enhanced due diligence reviews to vet those customers and make sure we're comfortable with them and with the activity. So
Beautiful.
really the basis is protecting the financial system. So like there's going to be a department like mine pretty much in every financial institution that does this type of work.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's really helpful to just get that bigger kind of bird's eye view of what it is that your role is. And I'm curious what first brought you to work with Kendall?
So we've done coaching a fair amount with FirstBank through FirstBank with Kendall's organization. I actually worked with her a couple of years ago. I did one of her speaking classes that my old boss, who was the chief risk officer, set up all the officers that worked for him to go through just to kind of hone our presentation skills. We obviously have to do a lot of presentations in various meetings and things like that. And then actually even some public speaking engagements, like I've spoken at Colorado Bankers Association type things. There's also an industry group called the Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists, or ACAMS for short. I've spoken at some of those types of events. So really to kind of hone our skills. But then they have done a very nice thing for us as we advance in our career. They get us coaching to help us become better leaders within the organization. So my boss, who's our chief compliance officer, was kind enough to sign me up for some additional coaching. So that's how I got into the one-on-one coaching with Kendall. And then I also did another speaking class with her actually earlier this week.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, fantastic. And what do you feel, but when you first stepped into this work, getting some of this executive level leadership coaching, public speaking, presentation coaching, what was going on in your kind of career at that time, like where really getting coaching was poised to make a big impact for you?
Sure. So we're always all looking to advance in our career. And so kind of where you're trying to refine your leadership skills and, you obviously work with different bosses throughout your career and learn different things, but really kind of trying to figure out like, okay, I know I've had some things modeled for me, got my own leadership style. How do I bring those things together? But then also what are some things maybe that I don't know yet as a leader or don't know the best way to approach things. And so really kind of trying to work on whether it be, like I said, presentation skills, having difficult conversations with people, strategy, that type of thing, and really trying to improve your own skill set so that you can help those underneath you. Like I would use myself as I'm a pretty self-reflective person. So I know that none of us are perfect and that we all can do better. And so like one of the things for me is I wouldn't necessarily say I'm controlling, but I do like to kind of have my hands in things and really trying to get that new mindset of like, I'm not going to be here forever. I'm, do hopefully get a new opportunity to do something else. And how do I bring up the people underneath me to be self-sufficient and kind of be those critical thinkers and whatnot that I might be good at myself, but not necessarily doing a good job of trying to teach others how to do some of those things, especially like in a job like what we do, where we're kind of just presented with a set of information. It's like, okay, here it is, dig into it and figure out what makes sense and what doesn't, and what are your resources. And so it's kind of that like, okay, well, I can do that myself. How do I do a good job of coaching others to approach that and teach them to kind of have that mindset?
Hmm. Amazing. And as you reflect on the tools that you learned from either the different one-day events or the one-on-one coaching with Kendall, the first area you're mentioning, right, is that coaching lead to grow leaders within your team, right? That sense of you can do it for
Mhm.
yourself, but then what do you maybe not know, you don't know yet about how to be a better leader of leaders and grow and nurture that within your organization. Were there any moments, conversations, or tools that stand out to you that you gained through being part of Kendall's organization and receiving coaching that you now know you apply or that you've seen impact your team in that way?
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of the things is asking more questions. Like, don't just jump in with the answers. Ask more questions and and give people, kind of some space to come up with their own ideas and thoughts. And then, obviously encourage when you're like, yeah, it's a great idea, or challenge when maybe they're not on the right path, but don't just jump in and fix it for them. It was kind of funny because even with my team, I told them I was doing the coaching and I said how in meetings, like we were working on one particular project where I said, hey, I'm going to start kind of taking a step back and I'm going to let you guys do more of the talking in the meetings with both the vendor and with our own IT team. And so it was awkward kind of for everybody at first because they would put a question out there of like, well, how should we handle whatever? And it'd be quiet and everybody kind of look at me and like, well, what do you guys think? And so when ordinarily I would have been the one that was just like, well, this is what we need to do. And so kind of like really trying to push my team then to, do more of the first engagement and everything. And then me kind of trying to like help steer the conversation as a secondary thing. And I know it's weird because it's like it's a basic concept when you think about it, but you do need kind of that repetition and somebody reminding you to do it. And then even like the check-ins with Kendall of, well, how's it going? And are you finding success? And sometimes it's like, well, yeah, some meetings are good, and then other meetings I revert back to kind of just the way I am and nope, this is over. And then kind of getting that continued reminders of like, okay, well, maybe try this if you're still finding quick to jump in, and just stuff literally like just sit on your hands, mute your. Sometimes our virtuals like keep your phone muted, so at least you have a delay in having to unmute, that kind of stuff.
Amazing. So all those little tips around specifically, it sounds like being able to embrace the discomfort of that silence for a moment to give space for your team
Yeah,
to step in and overcome their awkwardness to contribute more to the conversation before you just step in with what the answer might be. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Amazing. I love that tip of keep yourself muted so that it takes that extra delay before you jump in with
yeah.
your voice too, right? Beautiful. I mean, I'm curious. how have you noticed your team in doing that? I mean, you're describing the tool and the technique. What are you noticing is shifting in the way that they're contributing to conversations and the way that the impact that's having on the results that they deliver, like within the organization?
I think some positive things, like I use our analyst as an example, or our strategy and support analyst. She's doing a lot more leading in the meetings or saying like, hey, here's what I've decided. Are you good with that? And so I'm more of a checker now than the decision maker. And sometimes it's like, yeah, you did great. And then other times like, well, let's talk about that. Why are we doing it that way? So that's one thing. And then I've also just noticed them, because I've also said, hey, I just want to have you guys start making more decisions, not just in the project work, but in the day-to-day work of, you don't need to run it past me. And that was another thing of like, I always kind of felt like people were feeling like, well, we better get Mike's approval. And I even talked with Kendall about this, of that it was like, well, are they doing that because they like my input, or have I created a culture where everybody feels like they need to run it past me? And kind of through talking with the team and talking with Kendall, it sounded like it was maybe kind of a combination of the two things. It was, I maybe had kind of made people feel like they needed to get my approval for everything. And I don't mean approval and like, good job, here's a gold star, but just like a, hey, this is the decision, this is the direction we're going to go, or are you good with that? But then also, I think it was that, people did also give me the feedback, my team did, of saying like, well, you've done this a long time, you know a lot of stuff, like that's why we like to come to you. And I said, okay, but I got to that place by kind of doing that digging in and making some decisions and making wrong decisions and then learning from those mistakes. So you guys need to do some of that too. And so, and also the other thing that Kendall and I talked about is, I mean, I have done this, I've worked for the bank for 25 years. I've done this job for 11. So I am pretty well versed, kind of a subject matter expert. And I've also had some other career opportunities that have also given me some in-depth knowledge on things that actually did relate to the project we're doing. And some of that was where the team kind of felt like, well, how do you know all this stuff? Like, we don't know this stuff. And I said, well, some of it just comes from old experience. I said, but there are resources out there. So I even was then also trying to encourage the team, like, hey, we've got an intranet page. You can go research things on there. I'd give an example of even like, we have a teller system. I've never used the teller system. I wasn't involved in the project, but there were things I could speak to. And they were asking me like, well, how do you know about that? I said, I went and read the manual. And so kind of trying to do those types of encouraging things. And through, talking with Kendall, of saying like, well, what can you push your team to go do and not just do for them? And that's an example of like where I said, okay, I do need to be better about that, because just because I'm an inquisitive person who maybe wants to go read a manual and understand it doesn't mean everybody on the team is. And it's going to be my job to kind of try to help guide them to do those things and not just show up with the answer. I mean, it really goes back to the old adage of teach a man to fish versus give him a fish. I mean, that's been around for thousands of years for a reason, because it's true.
Yeah, amazing. And it sounds like the work with Kendall really gave you a checkpoint to kind of regularly reflect on in what ways is the tools and techniques I'm applying in meetings and in facilitation working and getting the benefit, which it sounds like is really higher effectiveness with delegating, empowering leaders to make those
Yes.
decisions. You're not holding so much. I'm curious, how would you describe maybe that shift you're experiencing in your own role to see your team rise to the occasion, make more of their own decisions, be more inquisitive, take more of that kind of responsibility and agency? What impact for you is that having to see your team function better in that way?
It's been great because the team seems like they're just getting more done, because I'm not a roadblock anymore or a bottleneck. Like, stuff's just getting taken care of and completed. And it's freed up time for me too to focus on some other things where it was, we're all tasked with a lot of things and all always feeling overwhelmed. And so it's been nice for me too to actually have some, like, larger to-dos that were always kind of getting backburnered because we were having to deal with the day to day, and
Mm,
kind of realizing like, oh, wait a second, I've actually freed up some time to work on some of those things because I'm not, getting bogged down in some of the day to day stuff and just allowing others to make those decisions. And then, I mean, it's like anything, there's still going to be setbacks where it's like, okay, somebody made the wrong decision. So we need to sit down kind of figure out like why did they decide that path, and what can we do to coach them or teach them for kind of the next time so that they don't make that decision, but also really, or kind of make the wrong decision, but also really like supporting the team and not coming down on people for making an incorrect decision, more just kind of figuring out like where was their mindset, and oh, okay, I think maybe here's where you were off, so that people feel empowered to make decisions and not fearful of that. Oh well, if I make the wrong decision, then I'm going to hear about it in a negative way, and so that's been positive too, because just better communication with the team, and almost more collaboration too.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I'm curious, how would you describe Kendall's coaching in your own words, like her style?
Um, so it's very, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. It's good because it's kind of at your pace and what you want to get out of it, and it's kind of conversational, and she gives you, she doesn't just tell you like do these things. She kind of figures out who you are, what makes you tick, what resources might be good for you, so that I think you buy in more. Give me an example. I read all day at work. Like that's what we do. So I'm not much of a reader outside of work. And so we talked about, she's like, well, what do you like? And I'm like, YouTube. I can then just put my headphones in, listen to that while I'm doing other things and whatnot. And so kind of like giving me things that would help me grow in my journey, that weren't necessarily me just having to sit down and read a book that I might not really then get much from, because I might be doing it with like I don't have time for this type of mentality. And
Mm.
so really she kind of tries to figure out like, well, what's going to work best for you? How can we help you, make progress and not feel like this is just some extra thing on your plate. And then it's fun though too, because there was one book that she asked me to read, and she's like, I really think you'll get a lot out of it. And she also wanted my girlfriend to read it as well, and who's also gone through Kendall's coaching. And so she kind of knew, I think in the back of her mind, like he might not read it for me, but he will read it for her. So she's reading the book. So I'm like, darn it, now I gotta read this book. But I did get a lot out of it, and it's actually really helpful. And so it was I think a good timing to do that, because I had buy-in to read it, and then it was helpful to read it. So I know I started this saying like, well, I'm not much of a reader, but it was like she kind of knew when you might need to do this thing, and versus when it might be some videos or listening to some online books or things along those lines. But the nice thing too about it was that it wasn't just like, oh, here's this one book about leadership or something like that. It was a very specific book that she selected for my girlfriend and I to read together, because there's also some exercises. And then after we read it, and I was talking with her in one of my lessons, or one of my coaching sessions, I should say, not a lesson, I was telling her about how there was a lot in that book that didn't just relate to like your relationship with your significant other or a loved one, but also kind of like maybe how you come into the workplace and other relationships, and some of the things that you maybe like are even bringing from childhood with you, and kind of your triggers and your trauma and stuff like that, and kind of realizing like, oh, maybe I do that one thing that's probably not cool, and here's why I do it, and so I can pivot on that. And so when I was talking with her about that it seemed like it had a more broad utilization than just a relationship. He's like, yeah, that's kind of the point. And it's like, okay, I figured.
Amazing. Amazing. I love to hear that, and I love that story too. I'm curious. What do you remember the name of the book that she recommended that had this impact on you?
I'm gonna have to look. It's called Getting the Love You Wanted, I believe, is the
Okay.
name of the book. Let
Beautiful.
me see if I can find it real quickly,
That's
just so
okay.
I don't. Oops, I went to the wrong thing.
And I think it's interesting to have you share that
Oh, it's in here somewhere.
as a
Go
story.
ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just because, again, when you think about leadership, executive coaching, in a corporate environment, to have suggestions like, getting the love that you want, right? And be able to take that step back and
Yeah.
recognize that these tailored suggestions, they do, although they might not have been the tool you thought you were going to get, it's meeting you exactly where you are. And there's a tie-in to see how the shifts or the reflections, whatever the tool might be, do have a tie-in to the way that you show up then in your leadership with your team and with the results that you're responsible for at FirstBank, right?
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Yes, and that was the correct title, "Getting the Love You Want."
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
so, but again, it's like because a lot of it focused too on like I said, kind of like what maybe happened in your childhood. I had a good childhood, but we all have stuff from childhood that's like, oh, maybe this is why I behave this way, or maybe I'm always trying to seek some approval for these various reasons and whatnot. And another thing I guess I'd say too that has helped me with um, the coaching is that kind of getting that reminder too of like you're investing in others, not you care about them. And so sometimes when you are delivering tough news to people or a difficult conversation or a crucial conversation, whatever you want to call it, trying to reframe it in your mind of like, and reframe it for them that, hey, I'm not coming down on you. I'm doing this to help you be better. So let's both look at it that way. And so that's also been helpful because, sometimes it can be tough if you're having to meet with somebody if it's like a disciplinary or something like that, because the work wasn't well done, but really trying to reframe it to, yes, there was this issue and we do need to address the issue, but here's why we're addressing the issue. And here's the course that we're going to hopefully set ourselves on going forward to help all of us be better.
Beautiful. I'm curious, what would you say is maybe the one or two results that you're most proud of that's come from this work?
I think that it's one is professional, one is personal. The professional one is I already mentioned. I feel like the team is just kind of vibing better and just getting their work done. I mean, people were always feeling pretty stressed, and we've also implemented some new tools for them to use, not just the coaching stuff, but it's helped to just give people more of that autonomy and let them do the work and not constantly be having to check in or run stuff past me. And just kind of feels like people are a little more, I don't know that I'd say calm, but just kind of you tell people are vibing a little better. And then on the personal side, I think it's really just helped me with kind of how I approach relationships, um, of asking more questions when people are having challenges. um, I think my default is to be a problem solver. And so then it's nice to start asking questions when, like, whether it be my kids or my girlfriend or other family members, friends, of kind of like trying to unpack what they're getting at instead of like hearing what they say and like, well, here's what you need to do. And like, that's my normal default and not jumping right to that. And so I think that's helped me also in relationships because it's funny, you can watch kind of quickly how people will figure things out themselves, or even maybe like what they think is the root problem isn't the root problem. Or even that sometimes they think you're going to react a certain way. And I know, like, I have two daughters, and there was one night we were having a conversation, and I talked to my older daughter first, and then my younger daughter's like, "Did he get mad?" Or something like that, and she's like, "No." And not that I get mad a lot, but it was like they thought I was going to react in one way, upset or something like that. And it was more like, no, we're talking about it. We'll figure it out. And so that's been very helpful. Sorry, that was rambling a little bit.
I love it. No, that's massive. And I love that you relate it both to the professional application and also the way that this coaching comes home with you to be more aligned and more empowered, more of who you want to be in all of your relationships, not just your colleagues, but also at home, right? And I'm
Yeah, my daughters both said that. They're like, "You've been acting different." And I said, "Well, I told you I've been doing the coaching stuff." And that we've always had a great relationship. They know that normally my default would be to like just jump in and do the things for them. But even some of the stuff where I'm like, "Hey, can you pick your clothes up off the floor?" Yeah, I'll get them. I'm like, "Can we please do it now?" Because that's the second time I asked. When normally I would have just, "Oh, I'm just going to pick the clothes up because I'm tired of looking at them." And so trying to, help them grow as people.
amazing. I love that. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that who have families and who are,
Yeah.
holding multiple roles in different environments, right? And that those skills really
Mhm.
do translate to all of those different environments. I'm curious, what would you say? I know we're coming to the top of our time together, just to kind of
Yeah.
briefly wrap up. What would you just say to somebody who is considering working with Kendall but isn't sure yet?
I would say that you really want to consider it because you're investing in yourself. I mean, I know there's obviously an expense and everything related to it, but it's like you're really investing in yourself for the long term and getting kind of your Kendall can help you figure out what's important to you and where you need to uh, focus and really help you improve in those areas. And I've done some other coaching and leadership in the past, and it felt a little bit more like it was almost kind of like, well, here's the book. And so let's go through the book. I don't mean a literal book, but like, here's what you got to do to be a better coach, a better leader, or whatever the case may be. And that's not Kendall's approach. Kendall's approach is to kind of find out what makes you tick, where your strengths are, that maybe you don't need to worry as much about those, and then figure out where your opportunities for improvement are, and then kind of make those be the areas of focus, but figure out how to improve of what works for you and not based on like her telling you like, well, you need to do this, you need to do this. And if you don't do those things, it's not going to work. Kind of figuring out and refining over the course of the coaching of how she can help you improve.
Amazing. And final question, is there anything else that you'd like to share about what your journey with Kendall's been?
Well, it's getting close to we're kind of at the end of our run for right now, but I definitely want to stay in touch with her and continue to work on my journey. But it's been great working with her. I first met her a couple of years ago when I did one of the leadership things, and so one of the speaking engagements. So when she was the coach that was suggested to me to work with, I was like, yeah, absolutely, because I already had kind of had some exposure to her, and so I didn't to even hesitate to think like that. Yeah, that's somebody I want to work with.
Amazing. And I guess one other final piece here, is there anything just from a
Sure.
feedback, being able to give feedback too for the Coleman coaching team, is there anything maybe you would have liked to experience more of or differently in the coaching that can be improved for future work and other clients too?
Um, I mean, I was pretty happy with it. I think I am more of an in-person type person. I know we're doing this even on video now, but I think did you tell me you're in Mexico?
In this moment, I am. Yes, I'm traveling in Mexico
Oh,
City.
okay, 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 okay. Um, so we had some opportunities to do like in-person stuff, and I would say that I would want to probably as many of those opportunities as I could do it in person. I know, it's obviously a busy world and we all have parameters around time. So certainly having the ability to do it like over video is great versus like if it was just a phone call, because then you can see each other. But definitely when I'd say for anybody who's doing it, like if Kendall wants to do some in-person meetings with you, take those opportunities and do the in-person stuff whenever you can.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate your time, your
You
thoughtful
bet.
answers, your presence, your energy. I'm glad to hear your team is vibing more than they've ever been before, too, under your leadership and these skills.
Yeah.
And yeah, I look forward to passing this along and wish you a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Take
you.
care.